Here's everything you need to know about Suiryu and whether or not he is worth pulling for. So let's get into the pros and cons about him. So for his pros, he is a strong backline DPS attacker where he'll be able to deal high amounts of damage towards the entire backline. He also has great synergy with charge damage units such as Drive Knight and Sonic V2, as he will be able to buff up their charge. He also has great synergy with tenacity units such as Sonic V2 and SSR Timeline, as they will be able to buff up Suiryu's ultimate attack. He is also a great grappler for Bomb's core, as he does have charge damage which can pierce through Bomb's shields, so he is quite a good grappler to go for if you don't have already a second or third grappler if you want to use him for Bomb's core. And finally, his Ultra Ultimate weakens enemies' attack, so you would want to pull for his keepsake because his keepsake does add some very good value, which a lot of other units do not provide, so he is quite handy with his keepsake. Now for the cons about him, he does require massive investment of about 400 plus stacks in order to be a very viable grappler unit for your grappler's slot, because he does do a lot of damage, but only if you have high investment into him. Otherwise there are much more better DPS alternatives to use over him, so you would want to make him as strong as possible. He is also a very competitive type, as he is a grappler, which we have grappler units such as Bomb for the core, but other than that, Gale Wind and especially Carnage Kabuto in the future, that's going to be very competitive, so Suiryu is not going to have a very long meta span. He also does need his keepsake in order to be that powerful, so you would want to pull for his keepsake if you do get him, otherwise he is not really worth getting without his keepsake. And finally, ATT is still the better DPS unit against Bomb's era because of the force field, and you can put a lot less sacks into her and she'll still be more powerful than Suiryu. So let's get into his attack skills. So for his basic attack, he attacks a single target with 2 hits for 140% of his attack, where he also gains tenacity for 25% of his max HP. And for his ultimate attack, he attacks the entire back row with 5 hits for 120% of his attack, where every layer of charge up deals 160% of his attack. This will be all explained through his passive, but he does deal charge damage. Now with his Ultra Ultimate, if you do manage to get his keepsake, he'll be able to deal 150% of his attack to the entire back row, and every layer of charge up deals 240% of his attack. And also the great additional buff when getting his keepsake is that whenever Suiryu crits, he weakens the target's attack by 30%, which is going to be very good to use, as it will weaken all those backline units that are always hidden behind. So he is going to be very useful in that regard, so you do want to get his keepsake if you do manage to pull for him. Moving on to his passive skills. So for his passive, when Suiryu gains tenacity, he gains 1 layer of charge up, which can stack up to 2 times. So his ultimate can stack up to 2 times. He also permanently increases attack of all allies in charge up by 25%, and when hit by non-crit damage, he reduces the damage taken by 40%. So what I meant before with charge up is that if they have charged, their attack or their charge attack will be increased by 25%. So he is a good charge up buffer, so he's going to buff your charge units very well. That's why he synergizes very well with charge units. If you manage to get his 5-star limit break, he will permanently increase the attack of all allies who have charge by 35%, and when hit by non-crit damage, he'll reduce the damage taken by 45%. And if you manage to get his 5p, he'll permanently increase the attack of all allies who have charge by 45%, and when hit by non-crit damage, he'll reduce the damage taken by 50%. So if you do want to use Suiryu in your team, you do want to put some hefty investment into him, at least get him to 5-star limit break. If you can get his 5-star awakening, that would be great, but if you don't need to, you don't need to, because you have other hero units. But he does work well if you do have him heavily invested in. He will be very good for those charge units. Now going through his enhancements, for his talent page, his page 3 talents are not important since there is no additional unyielding. So you can skip for that, or you can get it if you want to buff up his attack even more. For his damage sigils, you would want sword and piercing, and for your support sigils, you would want vitality and tenacity. For his damage sigils, you would want sword or piercing sigils, and for his support sigils, you would want vitality or tenacity sigils. Now for his limit break, at a minimum, get him up to 4 stars. If you want to get him to 5 stars, you can, because he will boost the charge damage of all of those with charge. So he does benefit very highly if you do get him to 5 stars, but if you can't at least get him to 4 stars, he's going to be fine on that end. But if you can get him to 5 stars as soon as you can for those units like Sonic and Drive Knights, and especially in the future such as Carnage Kabuto and Metal Bat, they will benefit very well if you have Suiryu in your team. And now finally, in regards to his awakening, at a minimum get him to 3-star awakening to attain his crit and crit damage buffs. And at a maximum, you can get his 4p awakening in order to attain that additional crush rate buff. Now if you want to, you can get his 5p, but I wouldn't recommend it since there are better hero characters to get the 5p awakening, such as Child Emperor or ATT. So I would probably skip investing too highly into Suiryu's awakening. Now going through his gear setup, so for his gear sets you would want a gunner or prisoner set, and in regards to his gear stats you would ideally want all of them to have attack and attack bonus if you don't have his keepsake. However, if you do have his keepsake, then you can go for 3 attack bonus pieces and then your chest piece being an attack crit piece, since he does benefit highly if you have crit because he can weaken your enemy's attack whenever he crits, so you want that crit as high as possible. Now for his buff gears, all of them should have attack, with your hero gear having attack bonus and flat attack, your grappler gear having crit and flat attack, and your special gear having damage rates and flat attack. And if you manage to get an augmentation from upgrading your special gear, getting a crit augmentation would work best with Suiryu. Now tenacity can also work well to make him survive for even longer, and he can benefit from that tenacity with his charge up. So the main takeaways from this unit is that he is great with charge teams as he is a charge buffer. So if you do plan to get him, and in future if you want to use him with units such as Carnage Kabuto and Metal Bats, he is a very solid option to choose. Now you do need to pull for his keepsake in order to be that viable, because he can weaken the enemy's attack, which will be super useful. He's only going to be useful with Bomb, so he does have a short meta, because without Bomb's core he won't really be as highly usable, so you just want to keep that in note. He does have a short meta like Hellfire Flame where they both need Bomb. And finally, there are better grapplers to use over Suiryu, such as the upcoming SSR Plus era, like Carnage Kabuto especially, so you will have to think about that if you are getting cramped with grapplers in your team. So should you pull for Suiryu? So for free to play and low spenders, he's a good pull to have if you do have enough heroic tickets to get him. I would recommend getting 180 heroic tickets so that you can pity for him. You can get him whenever you want, because he should be a permanent character within the heroic summons now, much like what they did with Phoenix Man. So he is a great pull to have, and especially for newer players who just got into the game and purchased the backup stick to get Bomb, so that in the future if they get units such as Carnage Kabuto or even Metal Bat for example, or for those who did awaken Bakuzan Plus, then Suiryu can be a great support character and DPS character in boosting their charge damage. So he is a very good pull to get, and I would recommend to get him if you do intend to use those charge damaging units. Now for mid and high spenders, he is also a good pull to have. He might not be useful in your main teams, but in the 3-team game modes such as Dojo Clash, then he is a great character to have, as well as getting him for your figurines to get your BPs ever so higher. So I would recommend in getting him either way. Now my preference is that I am going to pull for him, since I do have enough heroic tickets and I have been awaiting certain characters to come from heroic summons. Initially I wasn't anticipating that these characters would be in the heroic summons. I was kind of waiting for a Deep Sea King rerun because I don't have him still. It's been a year and I need that core for my laboratory, but Suiryu will be fairly useful for my 3-team game modes, as he can buff up those charge damage units. So this is actually quite a great pull to get, so I'm definitely going to pull for him. So a quick update on the SSR timeline. Yes, I am going back to this timeline for whenever I review the now 2 remaining SSRs that we still do not have. So because they put SSRs like Phoenix Man and Suiryu into the heroic summons as a permanent option, I now believe that they will do the same for Pig God and SSR Hellish Blizzard. Now I don't think they will give these characters out for free during events like the other versions of this game, since we all know that Moonton aren't very generous with us, so I believe that they will be releasing these 2 remaining SSRs during November and December's end of month rate up banners to finish off the year. Now who will be released first, that I don't know, so we'll have to wait and see what they do, but I would think Hellish Blizzard would be released first in November, then followed by Pig God in December, but we'll have to wait and see what they do. Anyways, that wraps up the end of the video. I'd love to give shoutouts to all of my amazing YouTube members, so special thanks to my X tier members being Gamma, Dragon, Solionaire, Blackshot, Joe, Swift, and Oliver, and my Z tier members being Red Skunk, and my 3 new Z tier members being Zelion, Skies, and Creighton. Thank you all very much for your increasing amount of support, as you guys are massive contributors in making this type of content possible. So anyways, that's all for today, and I will catch you all next time.